Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to the guests from India. The all we know that drunk driving, it's nothing new to the topic. We today focus in the context of commercial fleets. The drunk driving is a major issue, and it is leading to almost 18% of accidents in the UK alone, almost 13 to 14% of accidents, road accidents within India, which is a major issue uh, managing the fleet and the fleet owners. So if we more closely look at the what is exactly the problem, how are we going to handle, and without any technology today. So fleet managers have to manage and validate and check at the time of joining the duty of individual drivers. That requires enormous effort by the fleet managers and the staff who are managing their fleet operations day to day. So major risk, we focus on certain areas. What are the major areas any fleet industry would face the problem today? So the looking at the some of the key points: safety risks, legal and financial consequences, and reputation damage. So if you go through these topics of 10, the major, there's a lot more than that. But if you closely look at categorizing our fleet challenges with the drunk driving, those are the key areas for the commercial fleets. And individually, also, it affects in many other areas. And here, the safety. What is the safety aspect? The drivers driving vehicles being under the influence of alcohol, they're not only damaging, not only the safety risk to the vehicles, drivers themselves, and also other road users, which is significant in obviously the problem efficiency of the fleets it would have an impact with. The legal and financial consequences, having vehicles involved in an accident that could lead to a legal problems, as anyone involved in an accident would raise a legal cases, and then companies have to go through, because any drivers when they are on duty involving in an incident would lead to a companies have to manage those legal cases and then pretty much pay the bills as well. The reputation. So drivers allowing, assume that any reputed brand like an Amazon, if I have to take an example, if they're allowing their drivers, if they're not caring about the drunk driving as a habit to manage themselves by the fleet managers, if they do involve in an accidents, then obviously the media would pick up that and reputation would go away. The similarly, we have some of the areas which talking about increased the insurance cost. So any insurance would look at the previous history of accidents and incidents and how those companies are managing their drink driving as a as part of their safety aspect. So if they do not really have any corporate policy combating the drunk driving, and then the vehicles involving in an accident would increase their premiums on the insurance. So that's again additional cost to the commercial fleet vehicles. So not only that, loss of productivity we're talking about. So the vehicles has to be taken off road, or if it is involving an accident, repairs and paying wages to the drivers, the medical bills and various other things. So obviously, the one heavy goods vehicle taking off the road would cost thousands of pounds to the corporates. So employee morale and retention. So assume that if it involves in an accident, it's a chaos. The fleet managers are not managing it. The employee retention would become a problem because you're not regulating that. Therefore, employees may involve in alcohol related habits and then involving in accidents. So therefore, the organization do not have a strategy on improving the road safety. Then retention of those drivers would become a big issue. The complying with the legal. So this, we all know that Europe has got a very strict corporate manslaughter laws. So therefore, the organizations have to comply with certain regulatory thing. So if they're not complying with that, they would lose a license for the transport licenses and various other things. So therefore, those legal compliance has to be addressed under the drunk driving problem. So because it becomes a more habitual, and if there is no kind of a monitoring in place, the fleet managers have to put a lot more effort in order to manage their drivers and the increased efforts and the monitoring aspect of it, managing their fleet vehicle if they involve in accidents, and then managing more rapport with the insurance companies to manage to bring their insurance bills down. This is an enormous effort for any commercial fleet owners to manage the drunk driving habit. So they have to focus on prevention methods, training their staff, etc. So I would now pass on to Mark. Mark, is there anything you would like to add to those topics? We're talking in the context of drunk driving and the key points.
Yeah. Overall, it was something like 85,000 incidents were actually recorded in the UK alone last year. Someone just asked me a question, and I just had to double check on that. Put it in perspective, that's an astronomical percentage of the overall drivers. If you think 85,000 people were actually convicted of being seriously over the drink drive limit. So it brings into the question of, this is why the industry is moving forward into the technologies that we're heavily involved in now. So if we look at the actual next slide, we see that the average breath throughout UK and Europe changes. I know that in England and Scotland, there's quite a big difference between the two. So to try and get everyone on a level playing field, I think is going to be quite difficult. But with the machinery that we've got, we can actually set the limits for each individual country, or the limits that the actual employee or employer would like. I'm not 100% sure on what the laws are in India, but over the European Union, it can raise from literally having 0% in the breath all the way up to around about did it say, sorry, 1 second, 45 milligrams, but UK is 35, Scotland's 22. So if we look at it as a whole, there's going to be, we need a very versatile product that can be taken everywhere, which we think we've got.
Agreed. Agreed. I mean, in India, when you raised the point, Mark, it's a 3 milligrams out of 100 milliliters of alcohol consumed. So it is one of the lowest, but not the completely lowest. Some of the countries have got a zero tolerance. That means that you cannot drive with alcohol at all. Europe has got slightly, I mean, the UK is slightly higher side, some countries slightly higher side. Again, the breath alcohol concentrate, how much person can be very alertive, it varies person to person. So there is no kind of to say that you are happy to have like half a liter of alcohol, but half a liter for one person could lead to a higher percentage of the alcohol contents in the breath, which they can't really manage or control. They lose the senses. So on the screen we have little chart as a general guidance that is usually majority of the insurance companies would consider. So anybody having 0.02 BAC, which is the breath alcohol concentrate, then it gives you the effect of how we're losing. It's a really eye opener. I mean, the very first time I'm looking at it, a few years ago, it was a bit of a shocking for me. You can see that having a 2 milligrams of alcohol content in breath would decline the visual, functions and inability to perform two tasks at the same time. So if you consider while driving, It's not two. I mean, you got to look at all the angles of the vehicle, rear view, front view, and then you got to suddenly take an action on sudden turns. So
Your
that means, so we got to be very, very alertive, isn't it?
your reaction time, again, it depends on the size of the person and the amount of alcohol they've actually got in their blood. But the reaction time, on average, we can use an example of, say, if you're driving in really heavy rain, for example, you would already be aware that you've got to brake that much earlier. But with the alcohol, if you're driving in the heavy rain, you're going to be braking later than what you'll be braking normally because of the reaction time that it takes. Whereas it gives you a false sense of security with the alcohol in your blood, thinking that you're actually reacting quicker than what you are, because your brain's telling you, oh, hold on a minute, I'm actually reacting now, where you're not. You're actually thinking about the reaction, which is where a lot of the accidents actually occur, because your body is thinking that you've already done it when you haven't. Your mind is actually processing you hitting that brake pedal.
Agree. I mean, this is where it's, of course, it's not in our control.
No.
Every country has its own, the regulations, and then, the adapting to their own based on geographical habits of alcohol intake, various other things they manage. But in an overall sense, every country advises them, don't drink and drive. Okay, basically, if you're drunk, don't drive the vehicle. Um, in the UK, it's a bit of a surprising for me. If you look at within the UK, you have a Scotland, which adapts to the European kind of the thresholds, which are 5 milligrams per every 100 milliliters, whereas the UK adapts to the 8 milligrams for the 100 milliliters. So, of course, as I said, this is again the regulatory, and it's not in our control. Policy making, it does. But overall advice, what we do is, irrespective what the threshold levels are, don't drink and drive. Basically, drink, do not drive, whichever. So, yeah, the other point that caught me when the research was taking place of May, just like at 2014, the US study says, but the 8 milligrams, basically having alcohol breath contents of the 100 milliliters, 13 times more likely to involve in a fatal collisions. That's the pretty high. That's a pretty much higher risk, isn't it?
It's absolutely phenomenal when you actually delve into it. It's like, people will talk of alcohol percentage in the blood, but then when you look at a breathalyzer, obviously it's the percentage that's in your breath. So you can get two different readings, and people look at it and go, well, hold on a minute, I'm under. But you're not, because the police, they'll give you your breathalyzer, and then they would then take you back and then do a blood sample.
Yeah.
So whereas there is confusion as well by people going, well, we're under. You're not, because they're looking at the blood level or the breath level in the wrong aspects.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I mean, considering the time of what we have on this webinar, Mark, let's look at the technologies, what's available. Obviously, we got to provide a solution to the fleet industry, considering the risks. So aftermath of analysis is not going to really help. Educating does help, of course, but we got to look at various options the fleet industry has and what they have been using. Just moving up to the second agenda item, what we have, Breathalyzer technology. So I would really appreciate, Mark, if you can give a little more about what is Breathalyzer, how does it work, and what the impact and all the details. I'll leave it to you. Thank
No.
you.
Right, basically what we've got is you blow your sample of breath into the breathalyzer. It goes through a one-way valve, and then it reads the amount of alcohol that's actually in your breath. And if you don't breathe into it for the right amount of time, it will give you a void result. If you get the void result, then you've got to start again, and then you breathe into it for the allotted time. So it'll then give you a positive reading or a negative reading. Obviously, it gives you a negative reading, you're safe to drive. If it gives you your positive reading, you shouldn't be driving. And that's where our product really comes into it. The idea behind it originally was to be installed in vehicles where people have been habitual drink drivers, where they'd been fined and banned, and that's when they came up with these units to go, well, this is what it's for. And then the European Union have looked at it and gone, well, hold on a minute, this is a really good product. We need to make sure we can safeguard, say, school buses, children, people of public are being carried, colleges, you name it. Anything that carries a member of the public, it would be a good idea to put one of these in, because we can stop fatalities and incidents. The actual breathalyzer itself is very similar to what the police use. We have an interface that would actually automatically be connected to the telematics device or the camera device that would flag up if a person had blown a positive breath test. So obviously the company can then take action. The vehicle won't be able to be driven. So that's really it in a very short kind of nutshell.
Okay. Thanks for the details. So all we talking about, this technology is being used not only in the vehicles by the law enforcement or workplace you mentioned about, and also alcohol treatment programs in various places, right? This is not only the vehicle. So this technology is proven working. And then for the safety aspect, it was used offline, not necessarily be in the vehicles to begin with. So that is where traffic police, particularly, or some heavy industrial organizations would make that as a mandatory on there. It's a very heavy machinery, particularly the attention is required by the employees, isn't it? So this is a very safe, and it has become more portable over a period of time. Is it right, Mark?
Yeah, the units they're about a third of the size of from when they started out. They're discreet. They don't stick out when they're fit in a vehicle. They come in. It's a nice little holder, and it can be mounted in the glove box. You can have it on a side panel. So it's a small unit. It can be hidden, and it won't take anything away from the vehicle.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. Thank you for the details, Mark, on that. And it was a learning in terms of how the alcohol being blown into the device and through the breath and how it ignites and all that. That's cool, exciting. Let's probably move to the next topic, which is the ignition interlocking. I mean, this is nothing new. Everyone knows on the fleet industry, they would heard about it. At least they heard about this topic. So ignition interlocking, we have utilized in a various other the scenarios in the fleet industry. So we all talked about the driver ID example, and we wanted to make sure identifying a driver when they're driving, which type of vehicle. So each driver may have, in their large fleet circumstances or large commercial fleets, they have a specific skill set. Maybe a forklifts and various other machinery on the vehicles for the delivery, or someone having a certain level of qualification managing to only the van driver requires a different skill set to the heavy goods vehicles with the 26-ton vehicles. So therefore, the ignition interlocking comes into very handy to ensure when they're allocating a driver, and any mistakes can be stopped because you can have a driver authorization based on the skill set when they're starting. So this ignition interlocking as a technology being used, we dive a bit more into it, how the technology works, and where current use cases in some business commercial fleet areas has been used. Private hire. I mean, in India, we all hear the name Zoom car, and also things have changed. Hiring a vehicle, self-drive vehicles, particularly from the airport. So the olden days, they used to come and hand over the key and cross-check everything, but now everything is just an online. Basically, they can give you the code. That code will unlock and recognize the driver, and then goes on. So this is all the technology working based on the ignition interlocking, and doesn't necessarily be in the context of drinking under the influence, but the technology exists. It has been widely used by the commercial fleet. And what we talking over here, how this technology works. So we all talked about immobilizer. Those are the technologies we know. So what basically we're doing it here, identify the driver or authorize the driver, allowing them to use the vehicle. So this allows once identified authorized driver can just start the vehicle. It comes through the microcontroller, the device being fitted. This is a reminder. So sorry. So the microcontroller is a unit which is being installed as part of the telematics kit. Whichever the technology you wanted to use in addition to, whether it's a driver ID or you program it to certain aspects of it. And we also know that there are certain things can be done as well. I mean, I just gave you on the screen the helmet detection. Okay, we're working on a project where bike riders, I mean, doesn't necessarily be in India. Some of the regions have got a quite massive the issues involving in accidents. There are a lot of people in the cities, metro towns particularly, not wearing the helmet, driving it, and if there is an incident, pretty much putting themselves into risk. How do we stop it? So we can do this with having a camera in the front facing the driver, that we can stop the ignition, remind them to wear the helmet. That's an example. So the similar way we talked about the driver identification, and we also, the other use cases, we will talk more about the DUI perspective, how we combine with Breathalyzer, which Mark talked about, with the ignition interlocking in the next topic. But here, all we're trying to say is ignition interlocking is not a new technology. We adopt it in various other circumstances, and where the Fleetly also doing a R&D in various aspects, and particularly for the developing countries like India, where we have a lot more bikes. How do we help the bike riders to safeguard? And also we have a lot of fleets, particularly we deliver food, the food delivery, Zomato, and few other, even a few other delivery companies. All they're doing is, I mean, last a few years ago, it really surprised me. It was like about 5 years ago, I think, when I went and then the food industry is evolving, the delivery side. And when I just driving in the afternoon, all I can see the 50% of the vehicles on the street is the food delivery drivers. So imagine in the case of that, and then they are under the immense pressure delivering many deliveries in an hour time. So therefore, they breach the rules and they forget to wear this, the helmet, or they are breaching certain traffic rules, bypassing it. So therefore, it is very, very important to have the technology combating that sort of the behavior from the drivers. It's a corporation. I mean, it's a corporate's duty to introduce road safety and then good habits and then training the employees. Therefore, in my opinion, ignition interlocking it's important technology which we can adopt in combining with many other technologies. We will particularly see in the next topic how we can address the drunk driving problem by combining the breathalyzer, ignition interlocking, and any other advanced technologies which Fleetly looking at in research or any topics, any questions the guests may have. Okay. So, the Mark, would you like to add anything on the ignition interlocking before we move on to the combining these two technologies?
No.
Thank you. So here we already discussed on the breathalyzer, and we discussed about ignition interlocking and how do we bring the safety to the fleet. So we talked previously the drunk driving problems and then various commercial fleet challenges. We talked about breathalyzer and then ignition interlocking. So what we're doing is we combining these technologies to address the problem at the source. Therefore, I request Mark to begin the topic.
Here we go. Right. The main change is actually into the regulations that will be in 2024 for us in the UK. So all vehicles will be supplied with a interface for a breathalyzer system. The main reason, again, as we said, it's gonna start off with the passenger vehicles, the HGVs, and then it'll move on to the taxis, the private hires, moving forward. The alcohol technology has been around, as I said, since 1970, I think it was. Yes, it was. And it's been mainly used in Canada and America. And Sweden was the next country to bring it into use, and then Austria, and then it seemed to have a big gap when no one else around the world really thought it was a technology that they really wanted to use, apart from on the habitual drink driving convicted. So there was a massive great gap. And then in 2010, 2011, France introduced compulsory in school buses. And then the European Union started talking about it and then took it up. And then it eventually gets to where we are now, where the regulations change in 2024. As I said, the main reason behind it was to safeguard the children to start with, and then onto the HGVs and things like that. Because just for an example, I was talking to Malesh earlier. They, if you've got a tanker driver, for example, he's got either fuel on there, or it could even be as extreme as carrying the nuclear waste and stuff like that. Would you really want someone that's drunk driving one of those vehicles around? The answer is probably no. So what they basically said was, we've gone to the manufacturers, this is what we're going to do, and we want everyone to have new vehicles moving forward with a port for a breathalyzer system to be installed. So all the new vehicles, yeah, that's going to be nice and fairly easy, should we say, to integrate with our systems. The older ones, they'll be used very similar to all of the other interlocking devices. You blow into it, your vehicle won't start if you blow a positive. Correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think you get 2 chances, don't you, Malesh, on the device?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, if the repeated fail, the first test fails and the second test would allow just for them to complete. If that happened to be a positive, they would not be able to do another test for next 4 hours.
Yeah. Sorry, I just couldn't remember the time scale. So in reality, if they blow 2, we know that they're going to be over the limit. End of. So the vehicle will not start. Again, the employer would get notified. So if it's a bus or something like that, they can make arrangements for another driver to take the guy's shift. Really, I don't think I've really got anything else to add on that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, basically, this technology helping commercial fleet owners to stop at source. So they're not allowing the drunk drivers to go onto the roads and create a catastrophic incidents on the roads, creating many other problems, what we discussed already for the drunk driving. So what this is doing it, okay, stop. If you're alcoholic and if you're drunk and if you're over the limit, we won't let you start the vehicle. Therefore, it's providing the safety to all the road users. I mean, they're the drunk drivers, as we all know, how it's impacting having alcohol in their blood. So they would not be able to think right. They would not be able to take the decisions right. So they are not putting themselves in problem. They're actually putting other road users in problem. Therefore, this technology would prevent, before it happens. So therefore, there's a prominence is increasing. Yeah, let's take a bit more technical look at it. So we taking a bit more closer look at the technology, how we can use it. So we may think about to overcome. Some people may say, his mate is standing next to it. Oh, can you blow for me to bypass? So I mean, we thought about it. So the way to do this, there's 2 ways. One, breathalyzer having a thumbprint. So the thumbprints are being registered in the system. So therefore, system recognizes who is actually doing it when they're holding the thumb. So, but still that can be avoided. I'm still holding, but I am asking my mate to do it. And how do we overcome? We being a video telematics specialist, so we have a camera-based driver ID. So when the driver is sitting in a seat, the complete video is recording his test procedures. So the first, as you can see on the slide, the driver, either through the RFID or through the thumbprint or through the video camera validation of the driver, once the driver is recognized and authenticated, and system would prompt automatically to do the alcohol test. So once the alcohol is being tested, and if it is a positive, and the system sends the message to the telematics unit to say, don't allow to start the vehicle. So immobilizes the vehicle effectively. If the test is negative, then they can just start the vehicle and go. So what this is all doing it as we stopping at source, it's adding probably 1 minute or 30 seconds delay to start the vehicle. I think that 30-second delay is a much more worthwhile saving lives on the road. So that way. So what we do is if you look at those, Y diagram or diagram and flow diagram on the system, most of it is happening on the vehicle. So this is not talking to our servers to identify. The only way it serves only one place, it adds talks to our server driver ID. So either we have a RFID based offline, they don't need to even talk to the server. We know who the driver are because the database is there locally on the telematics unit. If it is a camera based, we would talk to our cloud and validate. It happens within the 30 seconds. So it's not really taking a long time. So driver picture is taken, analyzed to the cloud in 30 seconds, notified to the telematics units, okay, I identify the driver. So this is giving it safety at the two step, is not only stopping unauthorized driving, it also stopping, improving the safety aspect of it. So it's checking the safety aspect at the source to stop them going onto the roads under the alcohol influence. That is all I have on this. And the second part, I can see that notification, which is probably more helpful for the fleet managers. As soon as the device knows, obviously alcohol positive has been tested, that gets notified through our 4G or 2G, depends on the hardware, notified through our Azure cloud service. That is how they get a message onto the push notification onto the fleet managers or onto their mobiles if they use the mobile phones. That's how they get notified pretty immediate. So therefore, they can avoid any delay. They can probably have a replacement driver to deliver the goods on time. That way, I think it helps. Anything else, Mark, you have on the diagram or technical solution which I not covered?
No, you've covered it.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I think earlier you covered a little bit of this. Is there anything would you like to add on the EU regulatory measures coming in next year?
I don't think so. Some of the stuff that some of the regulations haven't actually been completely signed off yet, which doesn't surprise me with the way that the governments are working at the moment. Um, the bits that we've mentioned that we do know they've been signed off. The taxi side, I know they're talking about. I don't know if that will be in 2024 or not yet. I did pose a question a few days ago to one of my contacts, and they think it will, but they can't give me 100% positive answer. So they have confirmed about the school buses, the HGVs, um, and HGVs. I don't know. They didn't. They definitely didn't confirm about the taxis. Sorry, I was just trying to.
Okay. Yeah,
So,
that's fine. That's fine. I mean, I think if I'm right, this particularly the one you mentioned about breathalyzer technology for the HGVs and as well as the school bus transport, particularly the people carrying the vehicles. They're also introducing. Some vehicles, yes, even the cars, they're coming up with
yeah,
the speed limiters on there. So the
yeah,
speed limiters to improve that's another major, but this is not a topic for us today.
no,
But the speed limiters are the one is going to add the massive safety net to the commercial fleets and makes life easier for the commercial fleet owners as well as the fleet managers. Thank you, Mark, on adding those some points onto it. And the next, I think we move, considering the time we have, to the Q&A session. Any questions we receive, we will address through the offline if it requires. Just going to leave the slide open for a couple minutes and we go mute. And then once I have any questions read, I'm going to read out, Mark, and just putting onto the mute for a few seconds. Let's see if anybody asked any questions. Otherwise, we can conclude. So I would say, I think we haven't got any questions. I can't see anything coming up. Let's give me 1 second. Let's someone typing. Okay, doesn't seems to be coming up. Let's conclude that. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Preventing DUI, Driving Under the Influence, with Breathalyzer and Ignition Interlocking. I hope the contents of what we presented today helpful. If anyone has any questions in terms of the regulatory or on the technology, they require much more deeper understanding. I want to have a one-to-one call. We're quite happy to get in touch with, and you can leave your name and the number and the company name and your question clearly to us. Or alternatively, you have our email address on the screen. Please feel free to drop us an email with your questions and the challenges you're facing, or the technology, whatever you would like to get more information from us. We're quite happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you again for joining the session today. Thank you.